The youngest was just 11 years old. I'm Leah Green, and I'm investigating Britain's most terrifying children to find out what drives kids to kill.
I am heartbroken and lost without my Breck, and I will never be the same.
19-year-old Lewis Daynes was sentenced to at least 25 years today for the murder of Breck Bednar.
In a case the prosecution describe as having had a sexual and sadistic motive.
Brecky, I miss you. Every day, every hour, every minute.
Today, Lauren's son Breck should have been celebrating his 17th birthday.
1, 2, 3. Happy birthday, Breck! I love you.
But 2 years ago, the computer-loving teenager was brutally murdered by a boy he thought was his friend. 18-year-old Lewis Daynes. On the 16th of February 2014, Daynes sent a taxi to bring Breck 30 miles from his home in Surrey to Daynes' flat in Essex.
Breck had no idea he was going there that day to be murdered in a sexual and sadistic way. He thought he was going to improve his knowledge of the computer, to have a good time, you know, to learn about his passion.
But 24 hours later, Breck was dead.
Essex Police Emergency.
Hello. I need police and a forensics team to my address, please.
What's happened?
My friend and I got into an altercation, and I'm the only one who came out alive.
Are you telling me you've killed somebody?
Yes, I am.
Lewis Daynes convinced 14-year-old Breck Bednar to come to his house to play computer games, only to slit his throat and send photos of him dying to friends on the internet.
The way in which Lewis Daynes planned and carried out Breck's murder shocked the nation and left his family devastated.
That made me quite angry to know that someone had done this on purpose, and I wanted to know who and why this happened, and why Breck, because he was so kind, so caring, so intelligent. Just wanted to know why anyone would want to hurt him.
How was Daynes, a teenager himself, able to manipulate Breck online and lure him to a brutal and horrific death? They first came into contact through an online gaming group, which Breck's friend Liam was also part of.
Hello. Hi. I'm Liam, nice to meet you.
How's it going?
This is my computer, so I'm already logged into TeamSpeak.
What is TeamSpeak?
It's kind of like Skype, but without the video. Everyone has a microphone and a headset, and you can all talk to each other. And it looks like Matt's on at the moment, so I could talk to Matt and just see if he wants to sort of come on and talk. Hello, mate.
All right, mate.
I've got Leah here. Do you want to talk to her?
I can do if you want.
Hello?
Hi, all right?
Hi, Matt. How's it going?
All right, thanks. How are you?
Good.
There you go. You're straight in.
Matt?
Oh, God. Oh, Liam, you're on the other team.
Oh, we're on the other team?
Yeah.
Well, you better be afraid, mate. There are an estimated 6 million teenagers gaming online in the UK. Matt just died. Most play at home on PCs or consoles. Matt, I'm beating you.
Wow.
Oh!
We won.
I won! Yes! Beat you, Matt.
Hi, Matt. Do you want to hop round and talk to Leah?
I can do if you want.
All right, pal. See you in a bit.
So how long have you been gaming?
I started PC gaming when I was about 12, and quite quickly sort of joined a server with my friends and sort of stayed with that same group.
How much do you play, would you say?
Like sort of early on, I would play sort of 5-6 hours every night. I'd just get back from school and immediately log on and talk to all my friends.
What's the appeal for you?
There's a lot larger sense of community. It's just sort of this big network of players that you can easily interact with.
I may be a novice, but it's easy to see how socialising in this fantasy world can really draw you in.
Rather than having to just go out and meet each other, all we need to do is just go online, go on the server, play a game, and we're just talking to each other.
I would go into the room and you know, watch and see what they were doing, and I thought, wow, this was so interactive.
Oh my God!
You know, 3 screens were going, and there'd be gaming on one and images on another, and who was online on another screen, and you know, things were happening and moving, and I thought, I can see why he likes this. It's quite fun.
Breck would log on each night after school.
Mainly he was into Battlefield 3, and because of the amount of time he spent on the game, he was just that much better than any of us.
I did struggle to get him off. You know, anyone who's having a good time, no matter what you're doing, it's hard to pull you away from that activity. But he wasn't misbehaving, he was happy, and you know, I didn't feel like there was a problem.
The server the boys were gaming on was owned by Lewis Daynes.
Well, at first he was quite a close friend to all of us, really. He was fairly funny. He bought us games. Normally I wouldn't be allowed to sort of buy like 18s and stuff. He told us he lived in New York and ran companies. Also that he like worked for the Secret Service. You know, that was quite exciting.
Breck's mum Lauren first became aware of Daynes in the spring of 2013.
Because Breck always had his door open in his room, sometimes I would just pop in. I wanted to see what he was doing. And when I would go in, he would say, "My mom's here." And Daynes would say, "Hey Mom, how you doing?" And I'd say, "Oh, good." And you know, he'd ask a question. "Well, what were you doing?" And I'd say, "Oh, I just came from dance class." And a dancing lady would pop up on the screen. So we had a really good sort of rapport at the beginning.
Lewis Daynes would just open with Lauren at first and was very much there and one of the boys, and he didn't come at the situation like a normal online groomer.
Lewis Daynes was really clever getting involved in the gaming world. You know, primarily they're going to be young men, for example. You can get into somebody's head, you can become a friend, you can tell them what you want to tell them, you can manipulate pretty much every single aspect of your world and make yourself a perfect predator in guise of a perfect friend.
Daynes convinced Breck and the other boys that he was an 18-year-old computer genius, an international jet-setter based in New York. But in reality, he was 3,000 miles closer, living alone in a small flat in Essex. An only child of separated parents, Daynes had been abandoned by his mother at the age of 11, who then moved to Egypt with her new husband. After this, Daynes was in and out of foster care and was living independently by the time he was 16.
It seems that at some point he came into some money and that made him independent, and it also created an opportunity to a degree for him to start the fabrication of his life.
Daynes had invested in a number of online gaming servers and spent his days interacting with young boys.
For Lewis Daynes, it's almost like fishing when he's online. And he's waiting for somebody to bite. And out of all those bites, he can select the one bite that he's going to prey on. And essentially, that was Breck.
He was taken in by the possibilities and opportunities that were being offered to him, and he paid the ultimate price.
In the spring of 2013, 14-year-old Breck Bednar was spending most of his spare time playing online games, just like millions of teenagers around the country. But less than a year later, he was dead, brutally murdered by 18-year-old Lewis Daynes, the owner of the server Breck and his friends were gaming on. Daynes had portrayed himself as a jet-setting computer genius, but in reality, he was an internet predator who was homing in on Breck.
He portrayed himself as a very successful computer entrepreneur, and he promised Breck great wealth if he wanted to join in the business, and that was something that attracted Breck.
He aspired to be sort of an IT guy, someone who could program things. So I think the fact that Lewis said that he had a job ready for him, he thought, well, I've got my life ahead of me now. I've got everything ready for when I leave school.
To understand more about Breck and what happened to him, I've come to Surrey to meet his family, triplet siblings Carly, Chloe and Sebastian, and his mum, Lauren. Hi Lauren, I'm Leia.
Oh, hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you for having me. Can you tell me about what kind of person Breck was?
He was an easygoing boy, and he was well-mannered, and just really always sort of a model child. You know, I adored him from start and forever. He was the person that made me a mom when I wanted to be a mom so much.
He was my favourite sibling. He was always so kind and caring, and he was just the best brother. He was so smart. He was doing triple science, computer science, and he'd always got all A's. So I would always used to look up to him.
Mum, I got 3 merits for the history project I did.
Oh,
really?
Wow.
How did you get 3 merits? Whoa. I did really well.
He seemed to just soak in knowledge, and he wanted to learn. He had a thirst for learning, especially when it came to technology. I know he was going to have an amazing career because he just had that sort of drive and intelligence. And that sort of just sums him up, you know. Technology at his fingertips at all times.
Breck was murdered on his mother's birthday. The triplets were only 11 at the time. In the kind of days and weeks that followed Breck's death, what was life like?
It was much different to know that I didn't have my older brother anymore. He always used to be in his room playing on his computer, and he just wasn't there. I just thought how much of a psycho he must have been to target such a nice person. And I was so confused how Breck would be manipulated by him, because I thought he was so smart.
Alarmingly, it was Breck's desire to learn and his passion for a career in computing that Daynes tapped into.
Breck was an extremely clever boy. He must have had lots of potential in becoming a programmer, and Daynes truly manipulated that and said, "Come to my house, I'll show you the ropes, you can take over from me."
I think that this predator was just saying all the right things to get Breck to buy into this, amazing situation that he thought he was in.
By the summer of 2013, Lauren was becoming increasingly suspicious of Daynes.
Partly because his voice was very deep and distinctive. And when I asked Breck who it was, he referred me to a picture, and it was a picture of a really attractive young boy. And, I questioned Breck several times. Breck, is that really him? Because that doesn't match up, really. That boy looks younger, and this voice that I'm hearing sounds like it's much older. Breck did say, no, that's just his avatar, that he doesn't like to show his picture. Guess what, Mom? He works for the U.S. government. He can't show his picture because he's working for the FBI, and it's all secretive, and he's doing contract work, and he's in New York.
It was all sort of trickled out, and we bought into it partly because we were young and partly because he was our friend, and we talked to him for so long and we trusted him.
He was very, very good at getting into people's psyches, saying what he needed to say to get them on side. But once they were on side, he was very, very calculating in his approach.
He told me at one point that Daynes had made $2 million in Bitcoin trades and given it all the way to the Syrian rebels. I would say, Breck, really, you're saying this is a 17 going on 18-year-old boy and he's made $2 million already? Really, Breck? Who would give it all away? Even Mother Teresa herself wouldn't give it all away, would she? And right away, I was concerned that this person was actually a 40-year-old pedophile sitting in his underpants behind a screen, hoping to pull some boys. And that's why I kept such a close eye on it.
The refusal to reveal his identity was also starting to cause doubts among the other boys.
We asked him to send us photos, and he sent fake ones. We asked him over and over again to Skype us or webcam us, and he never did. He didn't have any social networking. There were a couple of times where we were going to meet, and every time he'd sort of pull out.
We didn't trust him as much then. We started to think, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right.
And when we pulled him up on on things which were obviously lies, he would get angry and he would sort of remove you from the server very quickly.
Daynes' attitude toward Lauren was also beginning to change.
I was the only parent who seemed to be in his way, and so he started to dislike me. And so when I would come into the room after some months, instead of the happy banter, "Hi, Mom," a wicked witch would come up on the screen.
He began to isolate Breck from everyone who cared about him.
Breck would join and Lewis would immediately pull him out of the channel with all of us. So it's just them on their own.
Even if you tried to talk to them in that channel, you would get moved out, so we're talking about private stuff. So yeah, it got to the point where he got quite attached and slightly controlling. Thinking back, that was probably just so that we wouldn't be able to say anything to Breck that Lewis couldn't hear, basically.
Under Daynes' control, Breck was becoming moody and argumentative.
And I think it almost felt like Breck was the child with two parents, and he had mean mom with all the rules, and then this great pretend dad figure who was teaching him the world about computers and opening up all these opportunities, not that they were real, and also just saying he shouldn't have to have rules, and it made me out to be the bad guy.
Daynes was trying subtly to turn Breck away from his family. He was trying to suggest to him that things that Breck's mother may want him to do were not necessary and that she had no right to tell him to do these things.
He was a classic narcissist. It was his desire to believe that he could make other people behave just how he wanted to. And that's what Lewis Daynes wanted, to create a scenario where he got exactly what he wanted and needed at any cost.
Daynes was changing all of his ideology, and Breck would use specific phrases all the time. Well, Lewis says I don't believe in God, so why should I have to go to church? Lewis says I don't make any messes, so why should I have to clean up? Lewis says I can get a Microsoft apprenticeship through him, and so I won't have to finish school. And I always had this preface that Lewis said, and I was like, God, who is this person that's, trying to control my life and Breck's life?
By now, Liam and Matt were also becoming suspicious of who Lewis Daynes was. Did you ever have a conversation with Breck where you said, look, I really think this guy is not who he says he is?
Every time he spoke to him, Lewis would be in the channel with him. So whenever we sort of mentioned anything against Lewis, he would either just shout us down or just make us look like an idiot.
Liam and Matt had had enough. They left the gaming group and advised the other boys to follow suit.
I would talk to them and be like, listen, this guy's weird and what he's saying doesn't add up. But unfortunately for a few of them, including Breck, they just did not listen at all and stuck with him.
It was really scary having this unknown adult having this power over Breck. I was concerned about who he actually was and how old he was and where he lived. And I was worried that he was grooming Breck.
In December 2013, Lauren decided it was time to take action.
It got so bad that I said, well, I just need to talk to him. And we went back and forth on live messaging with Lewis telling me how to parent Breck. And at the end of the conversation, I got fed up. I said, why are you telling me how to raise my son? I said, Breck has told me that your parents weren't there for you, but I am there for Breck, and everything that I do is because I care about him and I love him. And I said, I am his parent, it's going to be my way, and that's that. And that was the last time, that I had any interaction with him. And, it was the next week that I reported it to the police.
Please, how can I help?
Yes, I have a 14-year-old son, and I feel like he's being groomed. He's being turned against his family and schooling, and it's been ongoing for a while, and I'm getting really concerned that this person isn't actually who he says he is.
I told them that I was worried that it was, maybe an older predator. I told them that this predator would not show his face, so we didn't know who he really was. I had offered to meet him. He wouldn't meet with us.
The most we'd be able to do is to make some checks our end, some intelligence checks, to look into this guy to see if he is known to us and see if he's known to anyone else.
And I was told the police intelligence would be checked, and I felt a false sense of relief that if anything showed up in the records, that Breck and I would be alerted.
After Lauren had contacted the police, she took away all of Breck's computer equipment, only returning it once he promised never to use Daynes' server or have contact with him again.
When I gave Breck his computer equipment back after the week off, I talked to him again. I said, you understand why I did this? I want you to be on this new server. I want to feel like you're safe. And Breck said, okay. And Breck's personality changed back to normal. He wasn't as stroppy, and he didn't have the constant, Lewis says this, Lewis says that. Everything seemed like it was absolutely back to normal, but it wasn't.
Lauren thought Breck was finally safe, but she had no idea the police had failed to follow up on her call.
If the police had actually listened to my concerns and popped Lewis Daynes' name into the computer, they would have found out that he was known to the police for prior allegations of rape against a 15-year-old boy. He was known for having indecent images of young boys on his computer. But unfortunately, the people that took my call and that closed my call were too negligent to check.
The fact that that information, that there'd been this previous allegation against Daynes, wasn't available or shared or accessed by Surrey Police is very difficult to get your head around for me, let alone what it must be like for Lauren. She tried her absolute hardest to protect her son and did everything she could, and yet the worst still happened.
In February 2014, Lauren waved Breck off on a school trip abroad. She had no idea it would be the last time she'd see her son alive.
He had a Spanish exchange trip, and I was so excited for him. I just thought, wow, what an opportunity. I knew I was going to miss him because he was going to be gone for a week. And as he was leaving, we stood at the door. And then I just hugged him. We both said we loved each other. And as he walked away, I just thought, oh, I was so proud of this boy. He's so tall and handsome and so clever, so clever in so many ways. And he walked away and just turned around and waved, got into the car, and off he went. And I never would imagine that that was the last time I would see him alive. Ever. Never would have imagined.
Unbeknown to them, Daynes had couriered a phone to Breck, and they continued communicating in secret.
Daynes was so power drunk that when Lauren removed Breck's opportunity to use his gaming equipment, he sent him a mobile phone. That is so powerful, and it's so devious because it shows that as far as he's concerned, his needs are way above anybody else's. But also it gave Breck a really important message. It said, we have a secret, and secrecy is really important in predatory behaviour. If you can get people to keep secrets from the people that they love, you've got them.
For over a year, 18-year-old Lewis Daynes had been grooming 14-year-old Breck Bednar online, posing as a computer genius who could offer Breck his dream job. His mum Lauren had been so worried, she banned Breck from contacting the older boy and reported Daynes to the police. But Daynes had secretly couriered Breck a mobile phone and bombarded him with messages asking him to come to his home.
We do now know that Daynes was constantly obsessed with texting and emailing Breck when Breck was on his school trip.
They were almost all about a business that I think Daynes was proposing to set up with Breck, and he'd come up with this whole idea and said, I want you on board.
Daynes would say, oh, well, this is really important because I need to hand over my software company to you, and time's running out. I'm getting sicker and sicker, and the only person I can trust is you.
Daynes was getting to him that whole time and hadn't really ever let him out of his grasp.
And it was just obsessive, on and on and on, about what Breck had to do and how he had to come to Daynes to get handed over this company so that he could learn how to run it.
What it shows is just the length and extent he was willing to go to to try to keep Breck on side and to try to lure him in.
Lewis Daynes managed to get back into talking to him, and about 3 weeks before the murder he was shopping online for items that he used, so tape, condoms and the like.
It's sort of heart-wrenching stuff because you think of that 14-year-old boy believing everything that Lewis Daynes was saying to him, and he was just completely duped.
On his return from a school trip to Spain, Breck went to stay at his dad's house along with his brother and sisters. Do you remember the last time that you saw him?
Yeah, it was when we went to the airport to pick him up after his Spanish exchange with school, and he seemed really happy, like he had a good time. We went back home and it was all of us, my dad, Carly, Seb and Breck, and everything seemed all fine because we were all back to a good family state. And then I think the next morning he went off to his sleepover.
When Breck got home, it wasn't my weekend to be with him. And then he asked his dad, can I go to my friend's tomorrow? And his dad said yes, thinking it was a friend from school. Daynes had told Breck all sorts of lies to tell.
Daynes sent Breck an email to say, why don't you come over to my house?
A little while earlier, he'd sent a sort of false story that he could use to cover his tracks if he had to leave home.
He gave him a cover story that he could give to his father to enable him to be allowed to come and see Daynes and then subsequently to stay the night.
Breck did a thing that teenagers around the world must have done just millions of times over the years and said to his dad, oh, I'm going to go and stay with this friend, but actually you're going off to do something else.
He'd been promised great wealth in various contracts and the like, obviously all entirely fictitious, but something a 14-year-old might believe.
Breck seized the opportunity, and that's why he went to Daynes' house.
When he left, if somebody had told you then that you weren't going to see him again, would you have believed them?
Never. I would never believe that something might have happened because he was the strongest and the smartest out of all of us. I wouldn't have guessed he would be fooled.
At 7 a.m. on Sunday, the 16th of February 2014, Daynes sent a taxi to bring Breck 30 miles from his home in Surrey to Daynes' flat in Essex.
Breck got up in the morning and took this taxi. A taxi had been ordered in advance, and the taxi was paid for by Daynes.
To pay for that taxi from Caterham to Grays, that's maybe even in the hundreds of pounds, it must have been, you know, weeks in the planning to try to lure that child to his flat.
He was taken in by the possibilities and opportunities that were being offered to him. He brought all of his computer equipment on that day. He sent a text saying, "You'll be so proud of me, I'm upgrading my operating system." He asked his dad if he could stay and have pizza. And he loved pizza. Breck had no idea he was going there that day to be murdered in a sexual and sadistic way. And he'd never snuck out, and it was the first time he had done it. And he paid the ultimate price.
At 11:04 a.m. the following day, police received this 999 call.
Essex Police Emergency.
Hello. I need police and a forensics team to my address, please.
What do you mean? What's happened?
My friend and I got into an altercation, and I'm the only one who came out alive.
Are you telling me you've killed somebody?
Yes, I am.
Right, and who am I speaking to?
My name is Lewis Daynes. I'm 18 years old.
There was, of course, a body in his flat, so he had to do something and phoned the police, but the account he gave was there's been a fight that had ended up in a death, if you like, either accidentally or by way of self-defence.
Slow down, let me just take those details here. Penknife on the bedside table, Breck grabbed this,
Yes.
What, in order to harm himself?
No, in order to harm me. He opened it and then lost control.
To harm informant and opened it. States he lost control.
In self-defense, put my left arm up to block him from stabbing me effectively. We struggled. I got him to the ground. He got up. I grabbed a knife and I stabbed him once in the back of the neck, I believe somewhere near the brainstem.
You have just sadistically murdered a child. That child is now dead. Yet you breathe normally, you contain the way that you speak, and you can explain yourself without any emotion. That is the most dangerous type of human being that there is.
He turned around, tried to carry it on. I don't remember exactly what happened, but the fight ended with me cutting his throat. I believe I turned around and I slashed his throat.
You're telling me he is definitely dead?
Yes, I'm telling you he's definitely dead.
Hearing him make that call, using that language, and with the contrast of the call operator, who was obviously completely shocked by what she was hearing and couldn't quite believe it, that someone could be so calm and cold, and he knew exactly what he wanted to say and he knew how to say it.
Can you not interrupt me with this part?
Okay, go on.
Okay. This is being recorded anyway, isn't it?
Yep.
He fell face first on my bed. I tried to stop the bleeding. I don't remember what happened after that. All I know is I dropped the knife in my hallway. I stripped down and just sat in the shower.
Right, you've left the weapon in the hallway.
Yes.
And have spent how long sitting in the shower?
I don't know. Look, are the police on their way? I can hear something.
They are.
I'm going to go and do my part. Please, thank you for your help.
Right, just listen.
Within minutes of Daynes making the call, police arrived at the flat.
I believe they arrived to a knife in the hallway that Daynes had already said he used to slash Breck. They found bags of clothing and other evidence. They found blood stains around the flat, but also evidence that he had cleaned.
He changed his own clothes. He'd obviously had a shower, and he'd done all he could to damage hard drives and computers and mobile phones, which must have had an awful lot of information.
And that was a very clear attempt on the part of Daynes to destroy what could have been a really valuable and rich source of evidence.
But there was one piece of evidence that Daynes left behind. Before he called the police, he sent pictures online of Breck dead to two of Breck's closest friends.
To take pictures of Breck's dead body and to send them to his friends just demonstrates the degree of enjoyment he got from the situation.
He initially explained it away by saying he was going to ask how he could help the poor injured Breck.
He wanted people to bear witness to his work, but also to cause pain, to let those kids know, look what I've done, you're never going to see him again. That level of destruction and hostility, it's rare within a human being.
Because of the photos posted online, news of Breck's death was spreading fast.
My brother, Sebastian, he got a text from his friend and it said, if what happened to your brother was real, I'm really sorry. We had no idea what was going on. I thought he had been mugged or something. Carly thought he had ran away. We didn't expect anything as bad as murder.
When I found out, I couldn't stop screaming. It was devastating. And I don't know what happened. We'll never know. Because when you're dealing with a narcissistic psychopath, even if he did decide to say what happened, we wouldn't know if it was true or not. But I know Breck must have been really scared at some point, and that kills me. And I wish I could have just burst through the door and saved him.
What were your feelings towards Lewis Daynes?
I thought he was the most evil person in the world because he had killed my brother, who I thought was the nicest person in the world. And I just really wanted him to go to jail to pay for what he did.
Lewis Daynes was immediately charged with murder. He was claiming the killing was in self-defence. But the evidence found was about to prove otherwise.
Daynes tried to say that Breck had been stabbed really in self-defence or by accident. However, what we saw at the scene told a very different story.
Although the circumstances were unknown, what was really important was there an intention to kill and whether there had been a sexual element. Most particularly, there were some strips of duct tape that had been used as restraints. And once you started putting together those bits of duct tape, along with clothing that was recovered, that had cut marks in it, and ultimately we were to work out that they must have been cut off whilst Breck had been restrained.
Police were able to say that Breck had been bound when the fatal blow to his neck had been inflicted. So far from there being any sort of struggle or incident, this was a callous and cold-blooded murder of Breck when he was bound and defenceless.
The items that had been bought on the internet very much suggested there was a sexual element to it, so tape, condoms and the like. The fly on Lewis Daynes' trousers had been open at some point during the attack, and also there's a mix of semen with wet blood. But for them both to have been wet at the time puts them quite close together in time. It helps you show whether things were where they were when they were recovered by the police. A very good example would be the box of condoms that was opened was found in a drawer. You could tell by the blood spatter it hadn't been in the drawer when the blood had been spattered. So that gives a piece of circumstantial evidence to a sexual element.
Although Daynes had destroyed all his own computer drives, Breck's laptop was found intact.
Breck did take some of his own computer equipment to Daynes' house, and police were able to recover some of Breck's computer equipment and also therefore gain information from it, such as the contents of some emails.
By befriending, controlling the TeamSpeak group that they worked in, sending gifts, ingratiating himself to the young boy and then persuading him to come to stay with him. It was quite a manipulative series of controls that led to the death.
Despite all the evidence stacked up against him, Daynes was denying there was a sexual motive and claiming he was not guilty of murder. In November 2014, 18-year-old Lewis Daynes was about to stand trial for the murder of 14-year-old Breck Bednar, for which he was pleading not guilty. The police and prosecution had spent months building their case.
We were prepared to have a trial, we were ready to have a trial and had our evidence available to prove our case.
The witnesses were bravely going to give evidence to explain to the court what had happened, and for many of the witnesses this would have been distressing given their very close relationship to Breck and the tragic nature of his death.
They were obviously concerned and expressed on occasion how could he be pleading not guilty.
They brought Daynes into the courtroom and he looked very much like a small boy. He was not at all what you traditionally would think of when you think about internet grooming and paedophiles.
When they brought Daynes in and the judge read out the charges and asked Daynes, how does he plead? And Daynes said, guilty. You could have heard a pin drop.
Nobody really knew what to do at that point because nobody was expecting him to plead guilty.
It was shock, absolute shock. I was just like, what did he say? I thought I misheard because all along he had said not guilty. And all along, his whole life was fabricated around lies and manipulation and control.
Even in court, Daynes was determined to maintain power over those he had hurt.
He wanted everybody to see his work. He wanted everybody to know exactly what he'd done. He wanted to be the main player in his movie. All the way through, Lewis Daynes was acting out his own movie. He was the director. He was the main character, and his victim was Breck.
In January 2015, Lewis Daynes was sentenced to life in prison.
19-year-old Lewis Daynes was sentenced to at least 25 years today for the murder of Breck Bednar.
No amount of years behind bars will ever change the poisonous attitude and actions of a psychotic animal who can behave this way. No amount of years will bring back the lovely boy taken from us.
What could be worse than your child predeceasing you in circumstances such as this, with the restraint and the sexual element. It's difficult to imagine, really.
This case is one of the most shocking cases that I've ever dealt with, and it's particularly because of the young ages.
It's the age, it's the lengths he went to bring him to his flat, and it's the way in which he dealt with the aftermath. All of it makes it a really horrible case that just sticks in people's minds.
Even though Daynes is behind bars, the torment for Breck's family hasn't stopped. 2 letters purportedly written by Lewis Daynes have been published online, attacking Breck's family and attempting to present a distorted view of what really happened to Breck. I know that there have been some letters posted on the internet.
I know it's him because there's some things that have some bit of information in it that only he and Breck would know. And so I know it's him. He obviously wanted a voice from prison, which is actually not allowed. It's illegal for him to contact me, and it's also wrong that he should have a voice. He shouldn't have any rights after what he's done to Breck. And they're very slanderous. It's libel, it's lies, but it's really frustrating that, he has that capability to contact me after all that he's already done.
If the letters were from Lewis Daynes, as alleged, they speak volumes about the young killer's character.
Daynes is so manipulative that even from his prison cell, he manages to cause further harm. He doesn't care about anybody else out there being upset. He doesn't care about Breck's mother. He just cares about himself, his needs, his desire and enjoyment to continue to perpetuate this story. And hopefully somewhere in there, this angle that he'll convince people that actually it didn't happen the way that people said it happened, and that really, he's not really the bad guy that everybody thinks he is.
A prison service spokesperson has said prisoners are banned from using mobile phones and social media. If they break the rules, they will be disciplined and can have time added on to their sentence. 2 years on from Breck's murder, Lauren is struggling to cope with the anguish of losing her son in such cruel circumstances.
It's hard to believe that this would happen to your son or your family, because you go through the millions of what-ifs, and you go through thinking, what did poor Breck have to go through? And I still can't believe it after 2 years. I still say, can't believe it. There's nothing I can do.
My little man, down what centuries of light did you travel to reach us here? Your stay so short-lived.
For Lauren, the only way of coping is to try and ensure that what happened to Breck doesn't happen to anyone else.
I can't bear to lose Breck and not have something good come out of it.
She made it quite plain that she didn't want any other parent to have to go through what she'd gone through, and most particularly, that nothing should happen to any other child as had happened to her son.
I know, had I heard someone like me speaking out 3 years ago, Breck would be sitting here right now.
Lauren devotes her life to educating children and adults about online safety.
What she's doing is hugely important, because what Daynes did shows that not all internet grooming and online grooming is the same.
The internet has created amazing opportunities for predators. It's as simple as that.
It's not just an isolated incident. It's going to happen at some point in all of our lives, that in some way we will be touched by people on the internet who want to do us harm, who want to cause problems in our lives. And it's really just understanding that we need to prepare ourselves and be aware of it and act on it. We need to act on the warning signs. There's a lot of things you can keep in the back of your mind when you're speaking to someone online. One of the key messages is, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
It just makes me more careful. So like on the internet, I shouldn't trust anyone I just meet, and I shouldn't trust anyone that I don't really know. And it's just made me more aware of the dangers.
What makes this case so shocking is that, unlike many, Lauren was aware of the dangers and did everything in her power to prevent this tragedy. But in the end, Lewis Daynes still managed to cruelly lure Breck to his death.
In my opinion, you cannot change the mindset of a killer, and that's what Lewis Daynes is. And if he goes on the streets, then he'll kill again. And that's how hideously dangerous Lewis Daynes is. He should never, ever be let out of prison. It's as simple as that. Never.